It is now my pleasure to turn the webcast over to Dr. Peter Hirst, Executive Director, MIT Sloan Executive Education. Dr. Hirst, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and hello everyone, and welcome from the MIT Sloan School of Management. This is the Innovation at Work webinar series, and we're here today with Dr. Doug Reddy, who is one of our world-renowned MIT Sloan faculty who we bring to the world through this webinar series. You're seeing Doug's resume right now. I won't read right through it. What I would like to share with you, though, is that Doug really has a long history of working with us here at the MIT Sloan School of Management. He teaches in our executive education programs. Many of you, though, may know him for his work over the past few decades in founding the ICEDR organization, which does research into executive development and talent management. And Doug's research with that organization and publications are quite prolific. You can see some examples of those, and we'll provide some further reading at the end of this session today. I would encourage you to ask questions. The method was just described as we go through. I will be reading these questions and collect them and ask Doug at a few moments throughout the webinar some of the questions that you all are asking, and we hope we can get through all of those. With that, it remains for me to hand over to Doug. We have over 1,200 people registered from all over the world for this, so it should be a great session. And so, Doug Reddy, please, could you share with us what is this talent management strategy of which you speak?
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Peter, and I'm equally delighted to be here with everybody, and I hope that we'll spend a really productive hour ahead talking about this. And so let's dive right into it. Peter asked that question about how do we begin to think about building a game-changing talent strategy. I actually like to start with the idea of what's it going to take to build game-changing organizations. And Peter referenced some of the work that I've done in this area. The most recent Harvard Business Review article that I did was called Building a Game-Changing Talent Strategy, and it linked together this notion of if we're going to build game-changing organizations, we had better think about having a game-changing talent strategy that supports it. And so let's start there. Let's take a look at what we're talking about when we say what kind of organizations do we want to build, do we want to be working in out into the future. And primarily what, and you all know this, I mean, what we want are to work for organizations that stand out, with people who think differently. They go beyond just simple value creation. They go beyond difference making. They really become game-changing in their nature. And the atmospherics, the environment is all about crafting a special place. And so we'll talk about, well, how do you do that? That all sounds great, but how do we actually make that happen? And so we'll start off on the elements or the hallmarks of a game-changing organization, and then we'll begin to explore what we'll need to do from a talent management point of view to make that happen. So let's get started. I mean, game-changing organizations really begin with the heartwood of your business model, and that is having a powerful sense of purpose that's involved in it. So we want to place purpose at the core. We know for a fact from all the research that we've done that people are extremely excited about working for organizations that have a compelling sense of purpose and meaning associated with it. So being clear about your purpose is critical, and I'll give you examples of that in just a few moments. But having that at the heartwood of your business model is clear. But that's not enough, and we know that's not enough because you can be a purpose-driven enterprise, but without having a viable business model, it's not going to cut it. So we want to combine some things together. So we want this powerful sense of purpose, but we need to make sure that we're crafting an organization that also has a high-performance culture. So It's this notion of making sure both long-term vision, short-term day-to-day strategic and operational priorities. So really great companies are driven by a sense of purpose, yet also have a high-performance culture associated with them. But even that's not enough. And so the truly great game-changing companies combine this sense of purpose and high performance with a climate that is all about having core values and guiding principles. And so it's these three capabilities together that really begin to create game-changing organizations. And so this notion of the hallmark of a game-changing organization is all about building organizations that are purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and principles-led. And so this sounds pretty easy, right? And it's easy for me to say this. It's incredibly difficult to do. And when you get a chance, if you'd like to chime in with a question, Peter will let me know if there's a question or two that comes in. I would love to hear from any of you about why this is so hard to do. Why is it difficult to be able to build organizations that at the same time are purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and principles-led? Okay. Yeah. So with that, what we've got are this notion of one of the reasons why it's so hard is because this is a difficult task to do. I mean, we've got a McKinsey study that it cites around building critical organizational capabilities, indicates that almost 2/3 of organizations have stated things like building a critical organizational capability or talent management processes is a top priority, yet less than 1/3 of those organizations actually invest the time to do it. So we're trying to figure out, well, why is this the case? What are some of the big challenges around that? And comments that you'd have for this, we'd love to be able to hear from you. One of the things that we'd like to do is to get a sense from you and make this as interactive as we possibly can, even though we're doing it in a webinar format. There are people from all around the world. The first question here for you to reflect on is to what extent does our organization have a well-articulated, well-understood, powerful sense of purpose? So if you think about this, give yourself a grade for your organization. To what extent, number two, do we have a high-performance culture in the organization? So, again, grade yourself here. To what extent are we crystal clear about the principles, our core values that remain true both in good times and bad? And the fourth, I'd like to know, and hopefully we can push this out as a poll on the fourth question, is to what extent are we able to be purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and principles-led simultaneously? So perhaps if we can see what this would look like from a poll, I'll give you some time to respond to this. Let's take 1 minute and see what you think about that fourth question.
While people are thinking about that, Doug, a couple of questions that came in immediately that I think I'm quite interesting. You'll get to later, I suspect. One is, surely the answer to the question of what's difficult is, it's the people. Mm-hmm. And a few people are asking, isn't it the people that we hire? So we're getting it wrong right from the start.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good question, and that is often one of the responses that we have. I will get to this in a couple of minutes, Peter. And as we all know, people often leave bad bosses. They don't often leave their organizations, and so it's very important that we make sure that we place development as a priority in our organizations. And so it's not only have we made the wrong decisions in terms of who we're hiring, it's the people who are leading and managing the people now. So if you're not a solid, good developmental leader, and you're holding people back or providing people with non-helpful critical feedback, I mean, people are going to get very frustrated and leave. So it's a two-way street in terms of it's the people. The Carpenter adage of measure twice, cut once, that certainly fits when it comes to sourcing of talent. You want to make sure that every person that you bring into the organization has been assessed and vetted as carefully as possible, not only from an expertise point of view, but from a culture and values point of view. Okay, well, it looks like we're in the middle of the road here, which means that we don't really know. We're saying, well, sometimes we're strong in this area, sometimes not. And a small percentage of people who are saying, we're able to do this, in simultaneously. It is amazingly hard to do. It's relatively easy to have a compelling purpose statement. It's relatively easy to have a hard driving performance culture. It's relatively easy to lay out a set of core values. It is very difficult, as I see here by these numbers, to actually pull this off simultaneously. Part of the reason why is that you could have a core set of values about collaboration, about being in the business for the long term, and all of a sudden margins thin out, and an edict comes down from the group head office saying we need to cut across the board 5%, and we need to include headcount reductions with that, and it seems to fly in the face of the core values of the organization, and trust can deteriorate very quickly in an organization. So this is just one of the reasons why this is very difficult to do. And we'll talk about other reasons along the way, but your responses to the poll are not really different from what I've seen all around the world, and I'll do this many times with intact groups of companies who are trying to make sure that they're building a distributed leadership capability right across the enterprise. And usually the culture of the organization is one that needs paying attention to in a very, very, very big way. So what we need to do, and Peter referenced this notion from the question you had about, if we're going to build game-changing companies, we need to build effective leaders who are able to get it. And if I may, this is one little cartoon that lets us see that this is not the type of leader that we're looking for into the future. Somebody who's sitting here saying, I'm at the top of the hill. I've got thousands of people who are absolutely willing to follow me no matter what. I mean, this is a classic indication of yesterday's leadership mindset trying to head tomorrow's organizations. And so we, as you all know, don't need leaders like this anymore. More importantly, we don't need followers like this anymore. And clearly with the millennial generation, this is not going to happen. And so we're not going to have people who are just waiting for the edict to come in from on high. So we need to make sure we're building a distributed leadership capability that enables people to not only feel empowered but enabled to be able to really move forward with this. So what does that mean? So from a talent point of view, what that means is we have to start thinking about leadership in some creative ways. In ways that enable us to see that there's more to the leadership challenge than ever before. So traditionally, we have had leaders who have been very, very good at building things. They've been able to build their visions in their organizations. They're less so at being able to what I call being effective brokers, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So what do we mean by this? So we've been great at building visions, at building a strategy, at building brands. Our traditional silo leaders have been superb at that. In fact, that's what we've asked them to do for the past 10 decades, to say, we want you to grow your business and pay attention to that. Analytics drive it, incentives drive it, promotions drive it. We've been less effective at being able to say, all right, how does my unit's vision, my country's vision, my function's vision integrate with the group or the enterprise vision? How can I broker that statement so that it's so that people get it and they are able to see what their contributions on the ground mean in terms of actually building a powerful organization? Similarly, we've been really good at building enthusiasm at the unit of analysis of the local, whether it's business, function, geography. We've built that us against them mentality almost, but far less so in terms of brokering enthusiasm into a shared sense of mutual accountability. And more we need that in our organizations. We also need to be able to say, well, okay, we're able to build a unit strategy that's terrific, but are we able to broker the idea of what it is that we have that can be combined with other units, can be combined with other geographies to actually build a more integrated organizational capability? So these are bridge builders, they're aligners, they're caretakers, they're stewards of organizations who are able to go beyond their units and be able to articulate how we're going to line up the company's overall strategy and vision and sense of purpose with that at the local level. We've been very strong at articulating our values, less so at building an authentic culture that cuts across a variety of cultures around the world. So, and finally, we've been really good, actually. We know a lot about how to build leaders today. So unit leaders have been very good at building their teams and even developing their talent. Not so good, though, at brokering talent across the enterprise. So next generation leaders have to not just be great builders anymore, they have to be great builders and brokers. And so we need to build a talent management strategy that not only enables that, but recognizes that that's the leadership of the future and actually rewards that. So these are a few things that we need to think about from at least a talent management point of view of why it is that we've been really strong at building builders and not so great at developing effective brokers. Let's see why. Well, one of the reasons is there's a blessing and a curse in terms of having a strong organizational culture. There's a history of being able to build the best unit, the best business, the best function, the best geographic region, and so that cultural sense actually has taken root in many organizations, and it's tough to move from a silo orientation into an integrated enterprise thinking type of organization. The second reason why this is so hard to do is because many organizations are very short-sighted, living day to day or living for that next analyst report or the quarterly reports around performance, and developing a collaboration-based team of people, an integrated enterprise it takes time. It takes a lot of time to do. And because of that, it's easier being a silo leader. You don't have to think about what's happening in a different geography, what's happening in a different function. I mean, I talked to a chairman of Russia and Ukraine for a major consumer products organization yesterday, and he said, while I'm running Russia and the Ukraine, given all that's going on there right now, I'm still every day thinking about how I can help my colleagues in other regions at the same time. And that's the leader of the future. That's the person who minds his or her own patch, as the Aussies would say, yet at the same time is thinking across the enterprise. How do I make sure that I'm satisfying our consumers and customers first, And if that means I have to give up something in order to make sure that our customers are satisfied, so be it. We're going to do it. And so, and what we've seen with this silo mentality and the cultural strength that has been supporting it, there have been very, very few consequences for not migrating into a more integrated, collaboration-based enterprise. So these are the types of things that make it tough for us to build a next generation talent strategy. So let's talk about that. So if we're trying to build a game-changing organization, and we're trying to think about building game-changing leaders, we had better start thinking about what it's going to take to build a game-changing talent strategy. So the way I like to think about this is knee bone connected to the thigh bone. So we don't want to start with just saying, well, how do we create a game-changing talent strategy? What kind of organization do you aspire to build? What kinds of people are you looking for in this organization? And how do we now think about making sure that our talent strategy is going to support that vision, support that culture, support that direction? So let's take a look. Earlier we had talked about this idea of a game-changing organization is really about building the capacity to be purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and principles-led simultaneously. Well, how do you think about building a talent strategy that's actually going to help to build those capabilities and to build them simultaneously? So we're going to take a look and dive into that a little bit. And so this is actually a literal and real quote from a division president for a major Fortune 100 company that I was working with, and I obviously won't name the company because it's not, at least from my perspective, terribly flattering. But this is a division president of a major company saying, we don't need to waste time building a talent management process. That's why we have headhunters. That's why we've built all these relationships with headhunters and search firms. Well, if that's your talent strategy, you're going to be in deep trouble. Now, do we need executive search firms and headhunters and consultancies? Absolutely, of course. But if that's the sum of your talent strategy, then we know we're in big trouble. And this is not a waste of time. And I don't care if you're a large, complex, global company or a startup company. I'd like to show you some of the prior research that's taken place that says this is not just a feel-good or a do-good thing to do, but there are analytics behind it. A major McKinsey study was done that said that companies that invest in, and especially for high-complexity jobs, companies that invest in building their leadership cadre have, and with high complexity jobs, a 2x impact in terms of productivity improvement in their organization. So development matters in terms of productivity improvement. Another study, also by McKinsey and Egon Zehnder, one of the major search firms internationally in the world, they correlated companies that invested in talent management and leadership and growth trajectory, and found that those companies that achieved above average growth had a much greater incidence of investing time and energy and resources into talent management. So again, we're looking at not only productivity, but we're looking at, if you have a growth orientation in your business, this is critical as well. And if you're worried about the feel of the place, the Hay study just pointed to this notion that companies that invested time in building effective leadership had a much more powerful organizational climate that then impacted financial results by 30%. So you can begin to see this is not just about having a warm and fuzzy atmosphere inside your organization. There are analytics around it so we can connect the dots. So if you're sitting here saying, should we invest in the time and energy? Should I get my CEO involved in this? Well, ask him or her this question. Are you interested in having an organization that is above the norm in terms of productivity improvement? Are we interested in having an organization that is achieving above average growth? And are we interested in having an organization that has a terrific organizational climate? Then yes, yes, yes. Now, if we can pull this off, then we're going to have a game-changing talent strategy. It's going to be critical for us to be able to do that and do it in such a way that's going to enable us to have our eye on the prize, productivity improvement, growth, and a climate that's conducive to people being really, really energized. So what I'd like to do with some of the time that we have left is actually go from some of the conceptual framing to a case example, and we can talk more, and if questions come in about other organizations, but I find it useful to say, okay, let's apply some of these concepts back down into an organization that is actually living this. And this is BlackRock. BlackRock, as you may know, is the world's largest asset management firm. It is a success story over the past 2.5 decades that has been nothing short of remarkable. They are an incredibly fast-growing firm and one that is the envy of their peers. I'll just leave it at that. It's a company that, in that game-changing talent strategy, we profiled 3 or 4 companies, but spent the lion's share of the time on BlackRock because I firmly believe that BlackRock is among the next generation organizations in terms of putting it all together. Some organizations do certain things well, and some organizations do other things well. BlackRock does virtually all of the components of having a great talent management process well. So remember this purpose-driven, performance-oriented, principles-led mantra. Well, let me just give you a couple of quotes from Larry Fink, who's the chairman of BlackRock. And this was, I didn't feed him this was just him talking about what's going on and it marries up exactly with this framework where Larry was saying, what makes us a game changer at BlackRock here is that our clarity of purpose is crystal clear, always has been, always will be. So they work very hard on making sure that people get it in terms of why BlackRock exists as an organization. What hole would there be in the world if BlackRock didn't exist? What makes it that special place that I talked about earlier? So that's the one thing, but he doesn't stop there. What he also said is we are absolutely maniacal about being performance-driven at this place, yet at the same time we're also a family. And so purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and what Larry talked about then was saying, we're fiduciaries to our clients. That's why we exist. It's what we do, and it's what guides our decision-making day in and day out. And as a team, we win or lose. We are one BlackRock. And I think that this whole idea, and this is right from the chairman, right on down, and when you go into a company like BlackRock, I've interviewed dozens and dozens of people there. This is an organization who is absolutely firmly committed to this idea of being purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and principles-led. So let's take a look. What most of the great, what I call talent factories, the ones that just tend to produce just outstanding talent, they tend to make sure that what they're doing, and this really gets back to Peter's question, is they focus on hiring the very best people. They focus on making sure that the people that are joining the place are not only highly skilled at what they do, but they're thoroughly excited about coming to work for BlackRock. And so hiring the best possible people, making sure that you build that orientation with them as powerfully as possible, but then being, again, maniacal about driving a high-performance culture in the place and having a developmental orientation. So this is something that we want to pay attention to. This is very, very simple on paper. When you see it this way, they say, look, we want to hire the very best people. We want to make sure that we're building a high-performance culture, and yet we're going to have a developmental view about things, and that's the foundation that underpins their talent strategy. But it goes way beyond this. And on the left-hand side of your screen, I wanted to show you this because they focus attention not only on expertise development. So if you want to be an outstanding specialist at BlackRock, you can do that. They have a thorough array of developmental initiatives that if people want to be the best analysts on the planet, they can thrive and do that. They want to be the best sales folks. If you want to be the best HR people, they can do that. You want to be the best technologist. iShares is the envy of the technology platforms in the asset management business. In fact, most of the other asset managers actually contract with BlackRock to use Aladdin, their technology platform. So and that didn't just happen overnight. That means they made sure they had the best possible people in every single functional area, in every business building area, in every geography that they do business. But on the right-hand side, they also say, we need great leadership as well. And we're going to do that in a way that actually builds a cadre of leaders. And so right from the start, they do a powerful onboarding initiative with people. They teach folks and run initiatives about what it takes to move from an individual contributor to a manager. They understand this importance of being an effective broker, so they have placed a special emphasis on being strong at being influenced without having direct authority inside their organization. And they've created an award-winning enterprise leadership program for people who are transitioning from those silo leadership roles into more general management roles inside the company. But these are the programmatic things that BlackRock does, and they're very powerful and they're terrific. But what underpins what they do as well are a couple of other things that I'd like to share with you. Number one is they are thoroughly committed to people development right from the start. They're deeply committed. They are strongly engaged in the development process themselves. So what that means is they have a leaders developing leaders culture inside the organization. So you are viewed as a hot prospect, a hot talent at BlackRock, to the extent that you're able to move other people actually out of your unit into other units to move them along. So a leaders developing leaders culture is absolutely central to the BlackRock mantra of being a great talent factory. And the third thing is that they're accountable. They don't just say they have a leaders developing leaders culture. They actually measure it. This is an organization that measures everything. I mean, I've sat in on their global employee opinion survey data results, and I mean, they go, and this is not just the HR people. These are their line executives. They have this incredibly unique cadre of people called the Human Capital Committee, which is comprised of the top 40 line leaders at BlackRock who are actually running the policies and practices that guide BlackRock's talent strategy. So nothing spells commitment stronger than taking 40 of your top people out a number of times per year to talk about talent and to analyze what's going on in the organization. So let's begin to wrap up so we can have maybe some dialogue and some discussion around this. But in that, I wanted to just give you a couple of bullet points around this. Great game-changing talent strategies are those that serve as what I call the glue and the grease that enables your company to build these capabilities of being purpose-driven, performance-oriented, and principles-led. And by glue, I mean it's what brings us together as a team. It brings us together. It gives us that sense of purpose and colleagueship in the organization. What I mean by the grease is it provides that facilitating agent that says, okay, we've got challenges, yet at the same time, because in BlackRock's example, we are one BlackRock, we can work together, we can get past the politics, we can get past the silos, our culture and our values enables us to think client first, customer first, enterprise first, beyond our individualized domain. So they make sure that their talent strategy, furthers this idea of building both the glue and the grease. As I said before with the BlackRock example, line leaders are in deep as talent champions, and that's what they call them. They call them, we are talent champions inside the organization. Deep commitment, broad-based engagement, and thoroughly accountable for leaders developing that next generation of leaders. And beyond that, they've got HR partners who are savvy business leaders. They make sure that many of their HR partners are people who have held other key functional or line roles who are then rotated through HR, as well as comprised of deep HR specialists. So they're no-nonsense business people. In this case, Jeff Smith, who is the global head of HR for BlackRock, for example, literally sits in the office right next door to Larry Fink. That's how important he and his function is to BlackRock's future. So Larry relies upon him not only as an HR and a talent specialist, but as a savvy business leader who can help craft BlackRock's strategy going forward. So, and finally, together, these talent champions and savvy HR people together create this idea of a special place, and that's what keeps them apart. When you go through these types of organizations, whether it's a BlackRock, whether it's a Unilever, whether it's a P&G, an organization like this, they'll constantly refer to their organizations inside as this is a special place. And that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to make sure that we're building an organization that is truly a special place inside. We don't have either the time or the ability to actually put this out as a poll, but I wanted to give you a takeaway for those that would like to actually practice this back home. And this has been a very, very useful audit, and I would like to invite you to actually take this audit and use it in your organization. And don't just use it, don't just give it to HR, use it with your own team and do this audit and run an internal exercise with this. I use this audit all around the world to begin to generate a dialogue and a discussion around what's it going to take for us to build a game-changing talent strategy. And, starting with, do we know what skills we're looking for in the organization? And do we know what kind of climate we're hoping to build? Do we have the processes for identifying and developing world-class talent in the organization? Have we actually put together, do we have this idea of high potentials, and have we put together a development plan that is specifically targeted at the high pos in our organization? Are we flexible enough to be able to develop the talent that we need, for next generation organizations? Do we have this pipeline of people who are ready to move into these brokering roles that I talked with you about earlier? Do we have a diverse pool of talent? Are we addressing the issue of the leaky talent pipeline, female talent who are incredibly high potential but might be leaking out of that talent pipeline for a variety of reasons, and we're doing a research project right now on that very issue. So have we built a diverse talent pipeline? Are we able to say that our executives are committed, engaged, and accountable? So do this exercise, do the audit, have a discussion with your organization, and I think you'll find that this is something that will actually pay very, very strong dividends if you'll do that. And so one final thing before I go. When we're talking about being a game changer, this little cartoon, I was always a good dog, never took the time to be a great dog. I think in this day and age, good isn't good enough. I mean, you want to set the bar as high as you possibly can, making sure that what you're building is truly a game-changing talent strategy. Because if you're looking to build an organization that's going to be, one that stands out, one that has people that think differently, one that is this notion of a special place, you can't have a talent strategy that just is run-of-the-mill. So shoot for great and keep at it. And with that, I'd like to just perhaps turn it over to Peter and others to see if there are questions and comments in, and I'd be happy to respond to them.
Great, thank you very much, Doug. And as Doug mentioned, please keep the questions coming. We've had a lot coming already, and I'll do my best to ask Doug some of them now. So, one set of questions, Doug, if I may, would take us back to the business case that you were talking about earlier in the presentation, and you provided some data that suggests there's a 2 times performance improvement, at least in that study. At the same time, clearly, you've stated, and other people have been asking, this sounds like a very expensive and time-consuming proposition. And there's a tension with short-termism in terms of desire to get results and the investment required in this. There's a set of questions I find intriguing, though, that are about, is this truly a source of sustainable competitive advantage? Because if you look at those expenses, and good talent is expensive to hire as well, and increasingly so, isn't that just going to erode the margins that these businesses are able to generate over time? And so what we might find is that we put a lot of effort into all of these things and find that we're still where we were compared to our competitors.
Okay. So, terrific question, and that's that will fall into the notion of that division president that said, let's not waste time on building a talent strategy. Let's make sure we just create a relationship with the best headhunting firm. I've got a couple responses to that. Yes, it does take time, and so it's the great companies have multi-generations of CEOs who pay attention to talent management. I mean, the classic example that so many of us in the field have keep looking to is GE. Look at GE. You might think of GE as a old world industrialized company. Nothing could be farther from the truth. I mean, they have a remarkable capacity to have continuously reinvented themselves over the past 150 years, and along with that has been a complete steadfast commitment to talent management and building the people and culture inside of the place. Unilever, the same thing. Procter & Gamble's the same thing. Pfizer, the same thing. So yeah, it is expensive, but as I often like to say, if you think that's expensive, look at the expense of hiring the wrong people, and then having lower productivity, a sense of malaise inside the organization. Getting rid of people is incredibly expensive. Payouts for people who are poor fits. So yeah, I mean, you need to go into this understanding that this is going to take an investment of time and of resources. Now, what I'd like to say, though, is because this is MIT, my guess is a good number of the people paying attention to this webinar are from small, energetic companies who are saying, well, look, I don't know if we have the time for this. So my response here is that this does not have to be a fancy pants, bureaucratic talent management process. But what it means is we want to pay attention and build right into our culture the fact that people not only matter, but they are our most powerful weapon that we have. I'm writing a new Harvard Business Review article now, and one of the companies I'm profiling is HubSpot, and HubSpot is one of the fastest growing small, web-based marketing firms on the planet. Yet they have 700-800 people, so they're not these 300,000 HSBCs or 300,000 GEs. But this is an organization who, from day one, Brian Halligan, the founder, one of the co-founders of HubSpot, said, look, we wanted to create this idea of a special place right from the beginning. And so they don't have a fancy talent management process, but what they do is they built a very powerful culture. They make sure that people go through multiple interviews. They move people in and out of jobs every 6 months in the organization. So you can be a small startup, but say, you know what, people are drawn to challenge. They're drawn to great networks of other interesting people. So people want interesting work. They want interesting colleagues. They want this notion of a organization that is this idea of a special place with an authentic culture and a climate and that powerful sense of meaning. That's all you need to do. I mean, you don't have to have a sophisticated talent management process in order to be a great talent factory.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Doug. That's a very comprehensive answer, I think, to that question. And there are some follow-ons to that. You really just talked there about applying these principles in the context of a small startup. So we have a lot of questions. You know, we have 1,200 people registered. Not all of them are CEOs and chairmen of companies.
Right.
So if you find yourself sitting in a company, whether you're an HR function or a line of business, where you are inspired by these ideas, have you got any examples where this kind of approach to talent management and process has really blossomed from the middle out rather than from the top down? Have you got any advice for people who find themselves in those companies?
Sure. Yeah. That's a terrific question. Actually, that's a really good. I often say, don't wait for permission with this. I mean, you don't want to be a renegade just for the heck of it. Yet at the same time, if you've got that fire in your belly, you can do this at the unit level. You can do it at the geography level. You can do it at the functional level. There are this organization that I had mentioned before, where one of the division presidents had talked about, not wasting time on building a talent strategy. There happen to be other division presidents there who are all in on it, and one of the, and so that person's passion and the fact that over time people he became a magnet for the great talent, and we started. So this other division president started to see people, migrating over to his unit because he was a great developmental boss. He built challenge into the work that was happening. He made sure he hired great developmental leaders. So yeah, I mean, you can start at the local level. Don't wait for permission. But at the same time, to be a good, contributor to an overall enterprise, I would say also you don't have to be a renegade either. So you can just get started at the local level, but try as hard as possible to communicate and in a sense market what you're doing to your colleagues in different parts of the enterprise. So you begin to create this notion of a tipping point. Because you don't want to be a lone wolf with this over time, but you also don't want to wait. So I think you have to find that balance, but definitely do not wait until, if you don't have a CEO who, quote, gets it yet, get started at your own level, and people will all of a sudden want to be involved in your unit. And then the more success that you're having with that, word travels in organizations, and I think you can only receive great dividends from that of making sure that your part of the enterprise is a place where talent really feel like they can have growth, can have a collaborative environment, have interesting work, interesting colleagues, and the chance to grow. So yeah, I would say definitely start at the local level if you don't have that CEO who's really impassioned about it yet.
Great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interest in your idea of the distinction between being a builder and being a broker, and I think that's a new concept for a lot of us. And many people seem to be wondering, traditional incentives, would be they formal or cultural, really have rewarded people for building. What have you seen? Have you got any examples? And maybe to bring in some of the other questions, perhaps from other industries, than the ones you've talked about so far, that would illustrate how people could think about building incentives and culture that actually promotes brokering in place of or in addition to building?
Yeah. In fact, that's I had mentioned I'm about 70% of the way through now with the research on this new HBR that's going to come out next year, and that's one of the 5 questions we're asking, because we want to know how to move these concepts into applied action. So we actually asked that question to not only the chairman of Unilever and the founder of HubSpot and the CEO of Pfizer as examples, but also for the leaders in the trenches, the line leaders themselves. And I think I would say that what you need to do is to find both economic and non-economic rewards for that. Not everybody's motivated by money, and sometimes a powerful message, a story told about somebody who reached across the enterprise. Pfizer, for example, creates they have awards for people who go beyond their unit's mandate to actually collaborate and work across the enterprise to be effective brokers. HubSpot, even a small but fast-growing company. I won't mention the name, but one of HubSpot's leaders is the epitome of kind of enterprise thinking at HubSpot. And Brian Halligan, the founder, has said, we give out the X person's name award to people once a quarter at HubSpot because they embody this mindset and this culture of collaboration and working across the enterprise. So I think there are some people want to be and remain effective rainmakers, effective builders, effective analysts, effective traders inside financial services firms. We asked people about that, and they said, yeah, okay, there are some people who are just the best technologists around. We don't need to punish these people for that, but they need to know they're probably not going to become the next generation of leader inside the organizations. So being clear about what this means is important. Telling stories about it, communicating it over and over again, picking to people and sharing those stories really matters. Some organizations are, they have more economic rewards and incentives. One of the easiest things to point to are many organizations, as you move up the organizational hierarchy, more and more and more of your variable pay is based upon group results. So you can do it through compensation policy to be able to say, well, look, as you move into an enterprise leadership role, 80% of your comp is going to be determined by how the group does, not just how your unit does, even if you're running a unit, So there are very hard economic factors that you can use, as well as these, softer stories that can be told inside companies.
Is it important to be able to measure those soft factors as part of this process? Or do you just these companies are really relying on hard measurable factors? And if there are things that can be measured, people are very interested in, what metrics would you recommend that they should be looking at?
Yeah, well, as I said, a company like BlackRock measures absolutely everything. I mean, I was stunned to be able to get inside and understand how they look at the analytics around their talent. So whatever you can measure, you should be able to measure. So you should be able to measure, by unit, by demography, by gender, by culture, the extent to which people are moving ahead in the organization. You should be able to have analytics that can point to, our young females are progressing at a rate slower than their male counterparts. Why is that so? Now let's crawl inside this and take a look at that. You should be able to measure our highest potential talent has a stronger incidence of being more likely to leave over the next 3 years, and that should be a very big red flag for organizations, because if you lose your high potential cadre of talent, then you're in your next generation of growth is very much in trouble. So I'm a very big believer in analytics Yet at the same time, I'm not a believer in voodoo analytics. So, I mean, as the now former CEO of RBC Financial Group, Gord Nixon, said to me once, Doug, you either believe in this stuff or you don't. And we at RBC believe very strongly in having a people-centric culture. We place our consumers and our clients clearly at the heart of our business, but we are fully committed to being a talent factory. So a sense of culture and belief in people development has to be combined with the analytics that surround it.
Great, thank you. So I see we're drawing to our last 2 or 3 minutes. I'd like to ask you what's become my traditional question of our faculty in these webinars. And just one thing that the people who are listening to this today could do when we get off this call, or maybe when they come into the office tomorrow morning, depending what time zone they're in, just one action they can take. What would you recommend would be the place for them to start?
Oh, great. Well, I hopefully you'll do this audit, for one thing, because I think that will start to create meaningful, productive conversations around it, and you can do it for your own team. And so I'm a big believer in taking concepts and driving them into action. And to me, you don't want to be a lone wolf. You don't want to be somebody who's flying against the grain of what's going on all the time. But at the same time, you can take that simple audit. Please do it and create a dialogue inside your organization. Do that audit for yourself. Don't just say, oh, gee, I really believe in this stuff, but it's my organization that's holding me back. Do an assessment of your do a calendar scanning. To what extent over the past 2 months have I engaged my people in talent discussions? IBM has a thing called the 5-minute drill, where every top management meeting that they have is ended with this notion of what they call the 5-minute drill, meaning and in that 5-minute drill, it's who of the 30 members of the top management team at IBM, they have to talk about talent that's hot, talent that needs to go someplace, that needs development. You can't do that if you haven't spent the time yourself. So I'd say get in the game, do the audit, start right there at home. Don't wait for the organization to give you permission to build a talent factory. Do it at whatever unit of analysis that you can do to be effective with your team, and get started with it. And don't look for the things that hold you back. Look for the places where you can start and then build from there.
Fantastic advice. Doug Reddy, thank you very much. This has been an inspiring conversation. And if you could just do me a favor and advance on to the next slide.
My pleasure.
Thank you again. Thank you all for joining us. In the slide deck, which we will be sending out to everybody who registered, here is some featured reading that Doug has suggested, and I would strongly recommend that you look those materials up. And on the final slide that we have, just some more information about the 2-day executive education program that Doug teaches here at the MIT Sloan School. It always fills up, so if you're interested in coming and meeting Doug in person and having this conversation in more depth, then sign up soon for one of these upcoming programs. With that, thank you once again to you all. We really enjoy bringing these webinars to you, and it remains for us to sign off until we see you at our next Innovation at Work webinar.
Thanks to all of our participants for joining us today. We do hope that you found this webcast presentation informative. This does conclude today's webcast, and you may now disconnect. Have a great day.